On a sunny and pleasant Sunday afternoon, a group of elderly people wearing red t-shirts were jogging in an open-air shopping center. Suddenly, a man attacked them with a flamethrower and Molotov cocktails. Instantly, smoke and screams filled the air, and the elderly people were groaning in pain on the ground. This wasn't a scene from a movie, but a real event that happened on June 1st in Boulder, Colorado, USA. According to videos filmed by eyewitnesses, the shirtless man was yelling while holding two bottles. After the attack, he remained at the scene waiting for police and shouted, "Free Palestine." According to an analysis by the Anti-Defamation League's ADL Center on Extremism, the man in the video also shouted, "How many children have you killed? We must end the Zionists. They are murderers." This incident shocked the entire United States and quickly made headlines in major media outlets. The attack injured 8 elderly people. 4 victims were sent to a local community hospital and 2 others were airlifted to Denver for treatment, with 1 in critical, life-threatening condition. Local police identified the suspect as 45-year-old Mohammed Sobri Solomon. Solomon has been charged with multiple felonies including first-degree murder, use of an explosive or incendiary device, and federal hate crimes. A judge set bail at $10 million. The FBI immediately classified it as a targeted terrorist attack. Solomon is reportedly an Egyptian citizen. The Department of Homeland Security stated he arrived in California in 2022 on a non-immigrant visa, which expired in February 2023. He had recently been living in Colorado and subsequently applied for political asylum. Former White House senior advisor Stephen Miller commented that Solomon was an illegal alien, that the Biden administration issued him a tourist visa and then granted him a work permit after he overstayed illegally. He emphasized this event further proves that suicidal immigration policies must be completely reversed. Surprisingly, left-leaning media outlets like the New York Times collectively remained silent on this key detail. They reported the suspect's name but made no mention of his immigration status. According to locals, the attacked elderly people were Jewish and were familiar faces in Boulder. Since late 2023, they had been regularly jogging and marching in the city center to remind the community that hostages are still being held by Hamas. It is reported that since the October 7, 2023, Hamas attack on Israel, about 50 hostages are still being held by Hamas militants in Gaza. These elderly individuals usually wore red clothing, read out the names of the hostages, and sometimes sang. Despite the attack, the group stated they would not yield to violence and would gather again next Sunday at the same time and place. The group participates in an event called Run for Their Lives. According to the official website of this international initiative, they organize running and walking events globally to peacefully demand the release of the hostages taken by Hamas on October 7, 2023. The event's founder, Shani Klein, a Jewish lawyer from California, thanked law enforcement and fire department officials for their swift response and said his thoughts and prayers were with the victims, wishing them a speedy recovery. He emphasized that Run for Their Lives will continue its mission until all hostages are safely home. He stated that the word run is symbolic, emphasizing that the hostages cannot run for their lives, so we run or walk for them because they can't, and act before it's too late. He also stressed that participants do not protest but focus on humanity, their activities being a call for the innocent children, women, elderly, and other civilians held by terrorists and related to war. Subsequently, President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social condemning the heinous act, stating that anti-Semitism must stop immediately and that the US has no tolerance for hatred and radicalism. He wrote, "Yesterday's horrific attack in Boulder, Colorado, is absolutely intolerable in America. He entered through Biden's ridiculous open border policies, which have caused severe harm to our country. He must be deported under Trump policies. Terrorist acts will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This once again proves we must secure our border and deport illegal, anti-American radicals from our homeland. My heart is with the victims of this terrible tragedy and the great people of Boulder, Colorado." Israeli President Isaac Herzog also posted on X, formerly Twitter, condemning the incident as a despicable act of anti-Semitic hatred. He stated that the US and Israel would work together to defend their people and common values, and that terror and hate will not divide us. This event has heightened fears and is the latest attack on the American Jewish community. The Associated Press reported that the Boulder attack occurred as U.S. law enforcement agencies are grappling with a sharp rise in anti-Semitic violent incidents. Just last month, on the evening of May 21st, during an event outside the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., 2 employees of the Israeli embassy in the U.S. were shot at close range by a man who also shouted "Free Palestine" as he was taken away by police. On April 13th, the official residence of Pennsylvania's Jewish governor Josh Shapiro in Harrisburg was set on fire by an arsonist in the early morning. The suspect, Cody Palmer, admitted to hating Shapiro and said if they met, he would beat the governor with a hammer. According to statistics, anti-Semitic incidents in the US surged after the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel. For example, anti-Semitic hate crimes increased by 164% in New York City and 140% in Los Angeles. Multiple studies suggest a strong correlation with systemic bias in the reporting of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by Western mainstream media, led by outlets like the New York Times. Their reporting often focuses on Palestinian suffering, civilian casualties in Gaza, and the humanitarian crisis, emphasizing the destructive nature of Israeli military actions while rarely mentioning Israeli civilian victims or Hamas's military actions. Meanwhile, left-leaning media reports tend to downplay Hamas's responsibility, avoid in-depth discussion of its terrorist acts, or describe its actions as legitimate resistance against occupation, without emphasizing the threat to Israeli civilians. Such reporting may lead a significant portion of readers to believe that the Palestinian side is purely a victim, ignoring the bidirectional nature of the conflict's violence. Additionally, the media constantly emphasizes the 1948 Nakba catastrophe day and Israeli occupation policies, but seldom mentions the historical persecution of Jews or the context of Israel's founding. This can lead readers or viewers to form negative impressions of Israel, thereby transferring these sentiments onto Jewish communities. This is also evident from the frequent anti-Semitic remarks at graduation ceremonies at US universities like MIT and NYU, which we reported on yesterday. It shows the profound influence of these mainstream media and left-wing narratives on the public and young people. Next, let's talk about an unprecedented Ukrainian drone attack on Russia. On June 1st, Russia experienced its Pearl Harbor of the 21st century. In this historic drone attack, Ukraine destroyed over 40 strategic bombers at four Russian bases on Russian soil, causing significant losses for Russia. Coincidentally, 29 years ago, on June 1, 1996, Ukraine handed over its Tu-160 and Tu-95MS strategic bombers and hundreds of cruise missiles to Russia in exchange for gas debt relief and pressure to denuclearize. Therefore, this spiderweb special operation launched by Ukraine might be more than just a drone attack. It could be historical revenge. From footage captured by Ukrainian drones, multiple Russian bombers can be seen being destroyed one by one. Explosions and flames shot into the sky, turning the vast airbase into an aircraft graveyard. The scene was extremely grim. Meanwhile, the northern Russian port city of Belomorsk was also attacked. This is the headquarters of Russia's Northern Fleet and the main base for its most advanced strategic and attack nuclear submarines. Within a single day, Russia suffered its heaviest blow since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. According to Ukrainian reports, over 40 Russian strategic aircraft were destroyed or damaged, including a 50 early warning aircraft, Tu-95 strategic bombers, and Tu-22M3 strategic bombers. This amounts to 34% of Russia's strategic aircraft, with a total value exceeding $7 billion. These are Russia's most precious strategic aviation and nuclear strike assets, which cannot be quickly replaced and are extremely costly. To ensure the success of this surprise attack, the Security Service of Ukraine SBU made extensive preparations, planning and implementing it for 18 months with highly sophisticated methods and extreme secrecy. Ukrainian President Zelensky disclosed that he directly commanded the operation, which was carried out by a team led by SBU Chief Vasyl Malyuk. According to sources, they first custom-built camouflaged small wooden houses transportable by container trucks to serve as drone transport and launch platforms. These were secretly placed in trucks entering Russia. In this way, 117 drones were hidden under the wooden roof structures of the trucks, remaining silent on standby and were finally activated remotely for the strike. After 1.5 years of intermittent secret operations, the SBU finally issued the attack order on June 1st, using local Russian networks to transmit signals. These FPV suicide drones suddenly flew out from opened compartments in the trucks, then used artificial intelligence to identify targets. Simultaneously, they launched fierce attacks for Russian military airfields in Irkutsk Oblast, Ivanovo Oblast, Ryazan Oblast, and Amur Oblast, destroying 40 Russian strategic bombers. Some of these bases were over 4,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. One destroyed strategic bomber is valued at $100 million, while an FPV kamikaze drone costs only $430. This was Ukraine's boldest and most successful drone swarm attack to date, a textbook surprise attack plan worthy of a James Bond movie. Zelensky also boasted that the planning, organization, and all details were very well prepared, confidently stating, "This was an absolutely unique and successful operation." Zelensky also claimed all Ukrainian personnel involved were safely exfiltrated. The US disclosed that Ukrainian forces did not inform the US before launching this attack. Russian media revealed that Russian investigators have questioned the truck drivers who launched the drones during the large-scale attack on military facilities. All these Russian truck drivers were apparently kept in the dark. When they realized something was wrong, they climbed onto the container roofs trying to stop the drones from flying out, but to no avail. One 55-year-old driver, Alexander Z., reportedly said he had recently received an order from an entrepreneur in the Murmansk region. The entrepreneur needed for wooden structures transported from Chelyabinsk to the Kola district in the Murmansk region. After agreeing on a price, Alexander loaded the goods and set off, unknowingly. While driving, a stranger called him with instructions on when and where to stop. He was eventually directed to stop at a Rosneft gas station near a military airfield in Murmansk Oblast, from where the drones were launched. Russian investigators are reportedly searching for the truck owner, Artyom. Preliminary information suggests he might be Ukrainian. All this happened the day before a new round of Russia-Ukraine peace talks. On June 2nd, talks between Russia and Ukraine proceeded as scheduled in Istanbul, Turkey, but ended after just over an hour with no significant breakthrough. The only outcomes were an agreement to exchange all seriously ill and wounded prisoners of war and those under 25, and to return the remains of 6,000 fallen soldiers from each side. Ukraine also submitted a list of Ukrainian children it wants repatriated from Russia. The Ukrainian delegation emphasized that all civilians and about 400 abducted children must be returned. Russian negotiator Vladimir Medinsky denied any abductions, claiming it was to save these children, and accused Ukraine of acting. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov stated after the Istanbul talks that the two countries exchanged memorandums outlining potential terms for a ceasefire and ending the war. Russia's published peace memorandum points are as follows. 1. Ukrainian armed forces must completely withdraw from Donbas and New Russia territories within 30 days of a ceasefire. 2. The international community must recognize Crimea, Donbas, and New Russia as part of Russia. 3. Ukraine must maintain neutrality. 4. General elections to be held in Ukraine, followed by the signing of a peace treaty. 5. Prohibition on redeploying Ukrainian armed forces, except for withdrawal actions. 6. Prohibition on receiving and deploying nuclear weapons in Ukraine. 7. Prohibition on supplying Western weapons and intelligence to Ukraine. 8. Mutual waiver of claims related to damages from hostilities. Additionally, Russia rejected the US proposal for an unconditional ceasefire by Ukraine. Previously, according to General Keith Kellogg, who has advised President Donald Trump on Russia-Ukraine issues, Russia and Ukraine were to submit their respective documents in Turkey outlining their peace term proposals. However, it's clear that after 3 years of intense war, the distance to a compromise between Moscow and Kyiv remains vast. Trump had previously urged Russia and Ukraine to reach a peace agreement, warning that the US would withdraw its involvement if they didn't. But now, it's evident that the conditions proposed by Russia are unacceptable to Ukraine. Ukraine's choice to launch a large-scale surprise attack on Russia before the talks indicates a lack of sincerity for peace from both sides. The negotiations were essentially each side talking past the other. Commentary and analysis. Everyone should pay close attention this week. This week, things may happen regarding both Russia-Ukraine and US-China relations. As you know, some things have already happened with Russia-Ukraine this week. On Sunday, Ukraine attacked for Russian military airfields. Then yesterday, the two sides held talks in Istanbul, but unfortunately, the talks lasted only an hour, and Russia presented many harsh conditions that Ukraine found unacceptable. There's a saying everyone knows: what cannot be gained on the battlefield likely cannot be gained at the negotiating table. So, next, more things will happen on the Russia-Ukraine battlefield. Frankly, Ukraine's attack on Russia was intended to gain leverage at the negotiating table, but it seems unlikely they'll fully achieve that. So what's next? Clearly, Russia will retaliate, and the retaliation will not be light. Indeed, Russia already launched some counterattacks yesterday, resulting in some fatalities during these retaliatory strikes. So, everyone should pay close attention to this in the coming days. Secondly, on US-China relations, US-China trade negotiations have, to some extent, stalled. This is an indisputable fact. The US side has several times floated the idea that US and Chinese leaders might talk soon, but it's been all talk and no action, hearing the stairs creak, but no one coming down. I think the main reason for this is that China is currently assessing the extent of US sincerity, because on one hand, the US extends an olive branch, while on the other, it continues to pressure and crack down on China regarding issues like visas, trade, and so on. In this regard, China will obviously give the US some more hard bones to chew. This again illustrates another saying from the battlefield: when both sides are aiming at each other, it's about who blinks first. We Chinese have another saying: when two armies meet, the braver one wins. But US-China relations will ultimately be struggle without breaking. In the process of struggling, it's a contest of courage and wits first, courage, then wits. So, regarding these two matters, the US is constantly putting out feelers, saying that US and Chinese leaders might have a dialogue this week. Of course, we shouldn't fully believe the US. I think this is the US getting anxious and spreading rumors. However, it's also possible that the two sides might indeed have a leadership call this week. So, whether the Russia-Ukraine talks go well or not, or more accurately, whether the fighting on the front line goes well or not, it will likely escalate into a more intense battle before returning to the negotiating table. As for US-China, either there will be a leadership call this week, or China will let the bullets fly a bit longer, making the Americans more anxious before finally having the call. But frankly, even if the US and Chinese leaders talk, it won't solve all problems at once. Between the US and China, there will be some restorative, technical adjustments within a slowly declining relationship. Okay, later we'll talk more about Russia-Ukraine. Frankly, in yesterday's negotiations, what conditions did Russia propose that seemed unattainable to Ukraine? It's said that Russia demanded that Crimea and the four currently occupied regions be internationally defined as entirely Russian. Secondly, Ukraine must not only have no foreign troops, but also not join any foreign alliances, including military ones, and must maintain complete neutrality. Additionally, there were a series of other demands for close ties with Russia, etc. This clearly seemed insincere to Ukraine, so yesterday's talks ended in an hour. And during this process, there was some so-called verbal sparring between the two sides. All of this makes us think that the Russia-Ukraine war might not end before the end of this year. Of course, recently, if you're following gold prices, international oil prices, the economic market, including China's economy starting in the second half of the year, you're definitely very concerned about whether the Russia-Ukraine war will end, and also whether US-China dialogue will happen. Whether US-China dialogue happens mainly relates to whether US-China relations can achieve a technical, phased easing, which would be conducive to the recovery of the world economy, including China's, in the second half of the year. Regarding this issue, due to time constraints, I can't elaborate much here. Our think tank team actually conducts corresponding research on this daily, providing it to our members and clients. So friends, you can continue to follow. Also, if interested, you can also follow my comment section. So, my personal assessment is that the Russia-Ukraine war will probably let the bullets fly a bit longer. Therefore, starting this week, everyone is paying close attention to Russia's retaliatory actions. This whole situation with Ukraine has a few characteristics. First, as I said yesterday, 18 months and 9 days, and it was orchestrated by intelligence and espionage agencies. It's amazing they could keep it so secret. Because, frankly, during the ongoing war, Russia's intelligence capabilities are also very strong, having almost infiltrated all aspects of Ukraine's party, government, and military. But this time, they managed to keep it secret for 18 months and 9 days. Second, after being hidden for so long, they were still able to penetrate 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers into Russia's heartland. This is simply a miracle. Third, they smuggled the drones into Russia beforehand and launched them from trucks nearby. This also involves them utilizing the combination of drones and artificial intelligence technology to the fullest. Is there Western support behind this? I think there definitely is, but they indeed successfully kept it from, which in a way is also a miracle. This morning, I heard on the radio that the head of Ukrainian intelligence was very proud, saying, "Trump, didn't you say we have no cards in hand?" This was what the speaker implies Trump said to Zelensky in the Oval Office in February. He, the intelligence chief, said, "We are now telling you, we do have cards in hand. But the problem is, the Dow is 1 foot high, the devil is 10 feet higher for every measure. There's a stronger countermeasure. Russia will definitely retaliate later, and Russia's military and intelligence capabilities are by no means weaker than Ukraine's. If, as I said earlier, there are already signs of Russian intelligence infiltration within Ukraine's party, government, and military, then the subsequent retaliation will likely be even more fierce. So, this is a regrettable situation, but it's something we must face and take seriously. So, judging from yesterday's one-hour negotiation in Istanbul, it's clear the bullets will continue to fly. Clearly, on the battlefield, they haven't reached the point of only by facing death can one achieve victory.